The year 1995 brought us many things. The Power Rangers made it to the big screen. Singer Selena Quintanilla was killed by another woman in Texas. And Goosebumps arrived on television with its first season. How about we talk about wrestling? World Championship Wrestling officially began the Monday Night Wars. They already wanted to debut their weekly show, Nitro. However, if we talk about WWE, there would be very few positive things for them over the next 12 months. They faced the worst year in their history. However, that doesn't mean everything was boring, since quite a few important events happened and new faces also started to appear. Greetings to Alberto Valenzuela from the Dominican Republic. Remember to comment which country you're watching from so I can greet you in the next video. Diesel's rise was growing rapidly after being crowned the new WWE champion. Shawn Michaels was increasingly positioning himself as a key face. Most of the audience still preferred Bret Hart as their favorite wrestler. The first big event of the year, Royal Rumble, would take place on January 22. And according to the fans, it was the most boring Royal Rumble in history. British Bulldog and Shawn Michaels were the ones left at the end of the match. And when everyone thought that Bulldog had won the Rumble, Shawn hurried to eliminate him and ended up winning the Royal Rumble himself. It turns out that Michaels had never touched the ground with both feet, and only one foot touched the floor. Shawn secured his spot at WrestleMania and celebrated by his side with none other than Pamela Anderson. Everyone was excited because apparently the long-awaited match between Shawn and Diesel was going to titles the night before. While WrestleMania 1 had big celebrities like Mr. T and Cyndi Lauper, WrestleMania 1 would make the mistake of being based solely on celebrities, since Vince McMahon's lack of confidence in his roster led him to put his trust in personalities like Pamela Anderson. WrestleMania 11 might rival WrestleMania 9 as the worst WrestleMania ever. At Mania, Razor Ramon would regain his Intercontinental title against Jeff Jarrett. Owen Hart and Yokozuna would team up to win the tag team titles from the Smoking Guns. And The Undertaker would reach a 4-0 streak after defeating King Kong Bundy. After this, Bret Hart had what many call the worst match of his career against Bob Backlund in a submission match. Subscribe. Diesel, accompanied by Pamela Anderson, would defeat Shawn Michaels for the WWE Championship. Michaels was also accompanied by Jenny McCarthy. Although the Heartbreak Kid didn't win, he had an incredible performance in the match and would go on to gain much more popularity. Since that night, the main event at WrestleMania 11 was Van Bigelow versus football player Lawrence Taylor, which Vince claimed would break box office records, but it didn't. The football player would win the match, but people just couldn't connect with this fight. Vince would create a different type of event called Injured House, an event option that would serve as a buffer between the biggest events of the year. This inaugural edition would see Bret Hart face off against Hakuji in a totally underrated match that would prove why Hart was the best wrestler in the world that year. In June, the Hall of Fame took place, featuring legends like Pedro Morales, George the Animal Steele, the Fabulous Moolah, and others. And what if most of 1995 had already been bad? Would the worst event of the year end up being King of the Ring? The audience witnessed Bret Hart and Jerry the King Lawler clash in a dreadful Kiss My Foot match. The main event featured Diesel and Bam Bam Bigelow defeating Psycho Sid and Tatanka. But the big scandal of the night would come when Mabel defeated Undertaker in the semifinals of the King of the Ring tournament and then defeated Savio Vega in the final. This result made the fans violently angry, and they ended up chanting the name Extreme Championship Wrestling while the King was being crowned. Everyone thought Vince would take action after this rejection from the fans, but he didn't. Mabel would face Diesel for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam, and it would be at this event where Vince McMahon would try to attract the fans by putting all the titles on the line. Alundra Blaze, who won the title on April 3rd on Raw against Bull Nakano, lost it that night to Bertha Faye. After this, a new character would be introduced to the public at an event and would be called Hunter Hearst Helmsley, who would defeat Bob Holly. Bret Hart, for his part, would continue in a pointless storyline, this time facing Dr. Isaac Yankem. The first character Glenn Jacobs would play in WWE, who would later go on to portray a wrestler who would completely change history. Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon would repeat their ladder match from WrestleMania X. This time, Michaels would come out victorious, once again establishing himself as the Intercontinental Champion. Unfortunately, the main event was disastrous. Diesel and Maven failed to meet fans' expectations. This match ended up being so bad that it almost left the WWE Champion with a real injury. After Mavell fell with all his weight on his back, in fact, Mavell was about to be fired for that, but it was Diesel who asked Vince not to do it, according to what he himself said. Years later, on that September 4th, he would debut on Nitro screens. The wrestling response that World Championship Wrestling would have to compete week after week with WWE Raw. The show would air on the TNT channel, and as World Championship Wrestling's first big move, Lex Luger, who had been wrestling under contract with WWE just a few days earlier, would appear in World Championship Wrestling, surprising everyone. No one within Vince McMahon's circle knew about this. To make matters worse, Vince McMahon had to deal with terrible characters that weren't producing results. Vince would add Triple H as the last member of the Clique, a team with 5 powerful wrestlers, which included Shawn Michaels and Diesel. From that moment on, the Clique would make life impossible for any wrestler who got in their way. Although backstage, many superstars complained to Vince because, according to them, the opportunities always went to the same people, something that would actually become very obvious on screen. As time went by, Vince's favoritism would become too noticeable. Owen Hart and Yokozuna lost their tag team titles to Shawn Michaels and Diesel, even though both superstars already had individual championships and the fans were desperately asking for more opportunities for the other superstars. However, WWE, feeling that the fans didn't like this, decided to do something the following night on Raw, a segment where it was stated that Owen Hart was not the legal man to be pinned, since the one with the tag was Yokozuna, so that result was invalidated and the titles would return to their former champions. But WWE always gets what it wants. That same night, Owen Hart and Yokozuna would lose the titles in the same way against the Smoking Guns. If we jump to the next intermediate event, In Your House 4, held on October 4th, we would realize that things wouldn't change. The main event would be between Diesel and British Bulldog, a match that was really very boring. And this made Vince McMahon realize that there was nothing else that could be done. Due to Diesel, Razor Ramon won the Intercontinental title from Dean Douglas. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Wasn't Michaels the champion? In the weeks before the event, Michaels got into a real fight with some Marines at a bar, which forced WWE to take the title away from him. However, Shawn gave Vince a lot of headaches, but the boss knew that the kid really had talent and that he could become the top face of the company. On October 23, Alundra Blades would regain the women's title in November. Survivor Series would arrive in full force, though with a nonsensical card. Matches unrelated to the order of things, only Bret Hart versus could save the night. Diesel, where the Hitman would take the victory. After an incredible match to regain his title, Diesel would become an amazing villain and go down in history as the first wrestler in WWE history to make an obscene gesture to the crowd on a live show. Before the last event of the year came, Alundra Blades, being the WWE champion, would still surprise the world after going to World Championship Wrestling and throwing the WWE Women's title in the trash on the competitor's show. Vince couldn't believe it. He was being slapped in the face live in front of all the viewers. Vince's response was to deactivate the WWE Women's title again for some time and leave the company without a women's division. The last event of the year was coming, Injured House, an event that would bring more meaningless matches, although Bret Hart's participation would calm the fans. As the year ended, a Raw show was taped on December 18, but wouldn't air live until January 1996. On that show, a rookie wrestler would make his debut. For many, this WWE signing would be the great salvation of this company.